Welcome to our Transition Talks, a series of interviews with former athletes to discuss their athletic retirement, transition away from sports, and what they've learned throughout the process. My name is Brian Wood, and I'm a former basketball player turned leadership coach, and I'm a transition coach for Athlete Soul. I am here today with Chinny Nwagbo, a former professional basketball player, and we're going to talk about her retirement and the exceptional work she does now. I'll see you in there. It is a pleasure to be with the great Chinny Nwagbo. And Chinny changes the world with her actions, her mindset, her authenticity, and the manner in which she leads. I can't wait to hear about Peace Players International in Baltimore, Maryland, your podcast, Play It Forward, which I haven't heard all the episodes, but I'm working on it. Amazing work. Also a former professional basketball player and a sports envoy for the U.S. Department of State. Sounds like you've just been lounging around, Chinny, not doing a whole lot. Welcome to the show, and thank you for letting me invade your personal space.
No, thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate it. Thank you for that intro. Life has definitely and certainly been good, and I'm thankful for all my experiences. And also I'm just thankful to be here today and share a little bit about who I am and what my journey is. So thank you so much for that intro. No,
thank you. And it starts and ends with gratitude. So you're speaking my language. I have a quote from a powerful and inspiring woman. I'm just hoping you could give me some thoughts on this quote. The quote is, "Don't use someone else's ruler to measure your success."
Right.
And
right.
This is a quote from you, not to be creepy, but I was trying to learn about you. So that was one of the quotes that you dropped in one of your many podcasts, and it really resonated with me. So I was just hoping you could say a couple words about that quote.
Yeah, so it's not my quote. I did get that quote. I can't remember who wrote it, but I do stand near and dear to that quote. I also gave a keynote address, and I used that quote as well. And it's really simple, right? Don't use someone else's ruler to measure your own success. And in layman terms, that means your life is your life, and their life is their life. And our success will look drastically different. And our hopes and dreams will look drastically different. And the destinies for our lives will look drastically different. But what's great about our difference is that we're connected in love.
Yeah.
And so that quote for me is just a reminder to stay focused on why I am here and how I am using my life to serve something greater than myself. And not to get down by outside things, but to focus on my journey, my path,
right.
The message that's in front of me, why God has put me here.
Yeah.
The people that I love, the work that I'm doing, all those things have a specific meaning for me, Chinny Nwagbo, for me who's here. And so that's the quote. I think it's a humbling quote. It's an aligning quote, right? It's a quote that if you've lost your way, it brings you back to your center. And it's a quote that helps anyone understand and begin to define who they are. And so that's why I like that.
I love it. Thank you so much. And you're just dead on with everything that you communicated, especially the fact that we can chase the wrong things, right? I can chase your version of success and happiness and end up in the wrong place entirely. So
miserable, right? Yeah,
for sure. Right. This is absolute. This is the pinnacle for me. And if you chase that same thing, it's a nightmare. This is the opposite of what I want and how I want to live my life. So I thank you so much. The passion, this is so obvious to me, Chinny. Your passion for serving and changing lives. I'm curious, where did that come from?
Well, that's a big thing. I hope I'm changing lives, right? I hope that the work that I'm doing resonates beyond just myself, and it's putting some good energy in the world, and someone is benefiting from it in some type of way. It comes from having loving and amazing parents. It comes from knowing that I am a representation of tens and thousands of strong Nigerian men and women who stood before me to ensure that I had the life that I have today. It comes from understanding that there is something bigger than yourself. It comes from being that girl who was told that they will never play professionally, and understanding and internalizing that power into something greater than myself. Taking that negative energy, consuming it, turning it into positive energy and sharing it with the world. It comes from understanding failure as lessons. It comes from understanding that your life is a part of a larger story. And so serving is what we're here to do, right? Everything we do in life serves something greater than ourselves. And whether we admit it or not, or whether we choose to lean into that space, it's entirely up to us. And so it comes from that. It comes from that seed of love, connection, greatness, Nigerian blood, belief and commitment to myself, belief and commitment to God. It comes from that.
I love that. And then we're designed for greatness. And so I love everything you say about that. And I wanted to move into the area of, before we dig into some other topics, Chinny, I was hoping you could help us before we dive into retirement and your life after sports. Can you give us a short overview of your sports career?
As I mentioned, I started playing in the 9th grade. I was 14. I had the most amazing coach discover me in the hallway and say, "Hey, come out to play basketball. You're tall." And I said, "Okay, sure." And from that moment in my life, he lit a fire in me that has only blazed brighter and stronger as I've moved in the groove of my life. And so I really believe that my coach was like a saving grace, someone who implemented or planted seeds in me that have only blossomed into the most amazing creation of who I can be, the most authentic part of who I am. And so started there in the 9th grade, opposition from parents whose daughters have been playing for such a long time. Well, why are you here? You're never going to make it, all that stuff. And I was so dedicated to proving them wrong. And then that transitioned into just proving myself right, understanding that I was supposed to be here, finding a space for me here, that I would come to practice 2 hours before and then stay 2 hours after.
Wow.
And that really helped because I had, an amazing set of coaches who were inspired by my work ethic and then in turn inspired me to work harder. And that landed me a scholarship at Syracuse University. And from Syracuse, that landed me my 11-year professional career all over the world, playing 6 years in Spain, a year in Portugal, 3 years in Poland. I played in the World Championship Games representing Nigeria. In Brazil, I played in Chile in the South American Championship Games. And then I played my last year in 2016 in Israel. Played all over the world. And so that's my career. And then it transitioned into what I'm sure what we're going to speak to next. Hopefully that was short enough.
That was good. No, that's great. I have 100 more questions about travel and the best countries and everything, but we'll do that on another show.
Yes,
I'm always fascinated by so many things, including the choices that we make and how things work. And it just comes to mind for me is like, what if you didn't cross paths with that coach at that time? Would things have been different? That's just an interesting thought. And at 14, it seems like people are making their decision. What sport are you going to play when they're like 3 years old now? So 14 wasn't necessarily starting out really early, but you worked super hard to kind of overcome that late start. So just amazing insight. Can you describe the circumstances behind your retirement, Chinny? And as a basketball player, help us understand if it was your choice to move on or what that all looked like.
Yeah, good question. I think 11 years is indicative of, my choice to move on. And I think it was, I might have been 33 years old. And to be honest with you, completely transparent, because that's the only way I know how to be, for the last 3 or 4 years of that, I was like, you know what? It's time to retire. Time to retire. Time to retire. Time to retire. And I think that voice was just clearly outside I think, outside influence a little bit. And then some of it was just, what's next? I just wanted to know what was next. And I wanted to make sure that I was aligning my life in the right way so that that transition for what's next came smoothly. Did it happen that way? Absolutely not. And so, I got to my last year in Poland, which was a really tough year. I was starting off on a team that wasn't, engineered to have a type of player like me, and then switching my team halfway through, and then, thinking about long and hard about what I wanted to do that summer, and then getting the opportunity, that one last hurrah to go play in Israel. That's when I was like, okay, we're good here. And I'm happy to walk away from the sport, having done what I've done, having played in the countries that I've played in, having built the relationships that I've built, and having learned the experiences and the lessons that I needed to learn. And so I was very much okay with saying, okay, this is good. I think one of the biggest things that was an indication that I needed to retire was I'm very competitive. As an athlete, I was very, very competitive. Now I'm more competitive with myself. But at that time, I remember thinking, you know what? I would be perfectly okay with no games, but just traveling.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, okay. Or if we lose a game, I'd be like, we gave it our best shot.
Yeah.
Fine, So I think that was kind of, the idea of me, being okay with letting basketball go in a sense as the player, and then kind of transitioning into this new space. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you're talking my language again with the travel. And it also seems like, Chinny, when you have this greater perspective, it's bigger than me. That helps with the transition. I would just assume. So the biggest challenges immediately after your retirement, how did you feel during the transition? Did you experience mental hurdles? Anything you could speak to in that space?
Absolutely. Let's be real. Transitioning from playing 11 years as a professional athlete, and then sitting in front of people who only know corporate language and rhetoric, and only can look at resumes to dictate and determine if you're qualified to do the work that you're asking to do, is a really tough space to be in. So it was a really hard transition. The first part is understanding and knowing what you want to do, right? Having a clear view of what that looks like. The second part is making sure you are getting the help and support that you need. And that's not always out there, right? There's not a lot of support. Well, at the time, there wasn't a lot of support for athletes who were transitioning from being pros into going into the corporate world. And the support that is there now is primarily, in my case, for WNBA and NBA players. I didn't play in the WNBA, right? I played professionally, internationally, all over the world. And most people don't even know that most WNBA players make most of their money overseas because there's a larger market. And so having to sit in front of people and say, I know I didn't play in the WNBA, but I would still like those same opportunities. I played 11 years was really tough too. So sitting in front of people and being able to articulate your core characteristics, your core values that you've acquired on the court, and how they translate into the corporate world, and how you'd be a great team player, and how you would be self-sufficient, and how you would be motivated to do the work, and how you would be able to, communicative, be able to deliver PowerPoint presentations in front of people, your ability to learn the subtle nuances that only you could obtain being in international markets around the world. People don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
What they want to see is 10 years of experience computing X, Y, and Z, doing this, this, and this. And so it took me a long time. It was really hard and really tough. And I think the biggest thing about the transition is people want to box you into what you've always been. Oh, you're an athlete, so you should be a coach.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And then you end up chasing.
Diverse.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
No, it goes right back full circle. Then you end up chasing the wrong things. And you talked about values. It's also interesting because people will give you a value. You're extremely valuable. And for someone else to assign you a value that's less than what you are, no, that doesn't work.
Absolutely. And they'll assign you a value that's less than what you are because it's the value that they think they are. Right?
Yeah.
And most people don't even know how valuable they are. So how can you give me a value if you don't know your value, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the hardest part. It was the hardest part. It truly was the hardest part. And I think one thing that if I could share it with anyone who's listening, understand that the transition will be tough.
Yeah.
It will be hard. But find your sounding board. Find your people. Find someone who's doing the work that you know you want to do, who is great at it. Attach yourself to that person. Find a mentor. Find a sponsor. It's going to happen. It's just going to take time. The same way you had to start from scratch to be a basketball player and learn how to dribble and learn how to shoot and learn how to work in a team is the same spot that you're going to go all the way back to and do as you transition. But it won't be as hard because you've already done it before.
Right. Excellent advice. So anything that I ask, Chinny, if it's not comfortable and you don't want to answer, you have the option, obviously, to veto and just pass. If you're comfortable, can you describe, and it sounds like you've done extremely well. I know you have, and I know you've impacted thousands. But can you describe a period of sadness or what you might say that was the low point that you experienced emotionally?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I think everybody experiences periods of sadness. I think what's great about my life is that there's not too many periods of sadness. But it was not in my transition. Well, I guess it was a transition, right? It was from college to becoming a pro athlete. But a period of sadness, the hardest thing that I've ever had to really endure and go through in my life that brought me probably to the lowest point in terms of understanding the capacity and that love does not belong to us. We belong to love. Is when I lost my father. He died of cancer.
Wow.
My sophomore year, I was 17 years old, turning 18. And that was really, really hard for me. It was so hard for me. And I was so depressed. Looking back, I knew that I didn't know I was depressed then, but, you lose 30 pounds. It's hard to get to class. You're 3.0 and above average student. Your grades start to drop. And I think that was the hardest part of my life. My dad was amazing, right? My mom is amazing. They're amazing humans and parents who try their very best. And I am a result of that love. And so having lost my dad and having to deal with that in silence. So my Nigerian culture, we've been cultivated to be this way in our household. And it was when my dad was having cancer, we didn't really let anybody know, right? It was a family thing. We kept it within our family. And to the outside world, everything was okay, but no one knew that he was going to get chemo and all these different things. And I think the hardest part for me was that I'd signed and I'm going to Syracuse. And I came back my freshman year and he was perfectly, fine and healthy, getting his chemo, doing his thing. And he had gotten, because he had leukemia. So he had gotten a transplant. And when I left to go to school as a sophomore, he was fine, right? He was getting his chemo. He was in remission. I got the call. I was so excited. And in that short period of time, in that transition, he'd gotten drastically sick. But no one let me know. Because my mom didn't want me to worry. Nobody wanted me to worry. They wanted me to focus on school. Yeah. And so when I would talk to him, he'd tell me everything was fine. And so then there was a moment where my coaches didn't know, right? They knew that I wasn't getting into class on time, and they were really upset about that. But I was doing really well athletically. The best times, the fastest post player, score. Everything was well in the athletic department because it was a safe haven. It was a space where I didn't have to think about losing my dad. Right. It was a place where I didn't have to think about life, right? But then, shortly after, I got a call and it said, go visit your dad and he's super sick. And I let my coaches know, yep, I know. I didn't let you know that he was sick. I'm telling you now, he has cancer, but he's doing fine. And they're like, no, you probably should go home. So in that short transition, I lost my dad. And my coaches probably didn't do the best that they could to ensure my mental health and wellness. But that was a time of the past. And that same year, I tore my ACL, so it was a really tough space to be in. And it was the first year and only year we got to the Big East tournament and played in the NCAA tournament. So that was the hardest part of my entire life as a human, as an athlete, as a student, as a daughter, as a sister, as anything.
Wow.
And so, yeah. But what's great about it is we learn from those types of things. Yes. And that situation and who my father was and who my mom is has made me a stronger person. And I have been able to really, truly forgive those who did not treat me the best way that they could. And also forgive myself, right, for not speaking up and putting my foot down the way that I should have, even though I do speak up quite a bit. But that was the hardest part of my life.
So I've got to say this, Jenny, I'm so sorry for the loss of your dad. And sometimes people think that over time it gets easier. In some ways it gets harder. And I also have to mention that I know, didn't know your dad, but I know your dad is looking down on you with pride and love because the way you're living your life, you are honoring him every day. And I'm really sorry. Thank you for sharing that.
No, I appreciate it. It's a great thing to share about great people. It's a great thing to share about a great life. It's a great thing to lean into the fact that I am truly blessed to have had a great father and to have a wonderful mother. And then they were immigrants, right? They came over to this world, to the United States, and made a way for themselves so that I can have a way, and my brothers and sisters can have a way. And so to share I just think it's my duty to share that. So I appreciate the question.
How about during the transition? And it sounds like your family was and is amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about the support system that you had during the transition?
Okay, so this is the tricky part. So my family was very amazing. So at this time, I'm transitioning. Let's even just jump back to telling my mom, I lost my dad, I'm graduating from school. I'm telling my mom, hey, I want to go play overseas. And she has no idea what that even means. My dad was like my biggest supporter in terms of sports. My mom, in our household, education is number one. You got to be a lawyer, doctor, engineer. It's that running joke that we have in Nigerian households, but it's real. And so telling my mom I want to go play overseas, she has no idea what this is. She's not okay with it. You want to go where? To do what? And so then she became one of my biggest supporters. And then when I was transitioning from retiring from sports and wanting to go into whatever it is I wanted to go into, she was very supportive as well. The thing about me is I need support, but probably not in the way that typical people need support. I'm going to find a way, right? I'm going to sift. I'm going to study. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to ask for informational interviews. I'm going to watch documentaries. I'm going to read people who have done it before. I'm going to find a way. And so I think my mom's best way to support me was just, you're on the right track. Keep doing what you're doing. And that's what I needed.
Okay.
And she gave me what I needed. But other than that, it's just, that's how I am. I'm there.
Thank you. You remind me of when you talk about the expectations in education. A great friend of mine says this: with her culture, you were either a doctor, a lawyer, or a disappointment. That was like a little harsh, but it gave me some good insight and seriously high expectations in the household. Right?
Yeah. And it's not a bad thing, right? It's a bad thing when they confine you to these spaces and they're truly that. But I think the overall message here is we want the very best for you. We came over as immigrants. We found a way. And you are American citizens. And you have more than what we have. And so therefore you can find a better way. You can be whatever it is that you want to be. Anything you put your mind to, it is possible. Find that thing, love that thing, pour into that thing, and then pour into others. And I think that's essentially what the message there is.
Beautiful. So what do you do now, and how did you find your career?
Right. Great question. So a lot of searching and a lot of doing things in the in-between time until you find what you are really looking for. And so right now I'm the director of Peace Players Baltimore, where we use the transformative power of sport to bridge divides in historically conflicted communities around the world. Peace Players was originated in 2001 under the premise that if we can play together, then we can live together in South Africa. And then it moved to Northern Ireland, where we were bridging the divide between the Catholics and the Protestants. And then it moved over to the Middle East, where we're bridging the divides between the Palestinians and Jewish. then it moved over to Cyprus, where we're bridging the divide between the Turkish Cypriots and the Greek Cypriots, and came over to the United States in 2017. And we happened to land in 5 sites between 2017 and 2019, I think. So we're in LA, Chicago, Detroit, Brooklyn, and Baltimore. I oversee the Baltimore site, and I'm the director there. And so I'm happy to be able to use sports in a way that I've always used sports in my career, being that one person who stays after. I remember in Poland, and really every team that I played in, I would stay after and sign every single autograph and have like the grandmas kiss me and they would bring me chocolate. And then when my coaches would say in Polish, well, you know, we're having this community service event. Would you like to come? We know you don't speak any English. You know, do you want to do the work? And I would love to. I did it in Syracuse. I did it in any opportunity that I had to be able to go and give back. I loved doing that. And so being able to land this role as a director, and to be honest, I started as a program coordinator. The director position was available, but I didn't get an interview. And I thought to myself, okay, I know that I am more than a coordinator, but I know that in order for me to get my foot in the door, you have to start as a coordinator. So that's going back to, you know, learning the dribble. Yeah. So you got to get your foot in the door. And I knew, and I had a plan that I would work towards getting X as my goal. And so in 6 months, I was promoted to program manager. Wow. And I think maybe a couple months, 6 months later, I got the role as director, working really hard and really pouring into the work because I'm supposed to be doing this work. Yeah. And I don't know what that capacity looks like in the future, but this is an amazing start. And so, yeah, that's how I landed here. I'm also an envoy for the Department of State, as you mentioned. And so what we do is we use sport to build allies, to build relationships around the world. We teach women and girls empowerment, teamwork and leadership skills, and create safe places for kids with disabilities to play, working with the various U.S. embassies around the world. And it's a great space to be in. I love sports diplomacy. I love sports for social good. And I love the impact that sports has on the world. It creates a medium, a space for us to talk about things that otherwise would be uncomfortable conversations. It brings people from around the world together and unites us in ways we never thought we would be united, all through sport.
Yeah. And I have to say, right. So it's almost the opposite of what we were talking earlier about, how the world will tell you or corporate will tell you, this is your value, right. And they're putting a smaller amount on you. But you're doing just the opposite. You're right. Saying, wait a minute, you're like way better than you even know. So that is some amazing work. I want to talk to you more about that when we're done with this interview. But what about the transferable skills? Is there something that you've learned from sports that you use in your everyday life beyond what you mentioned?
Yes. You know, in sports, we learn about wins and losses, right? And if you have a phenomenal coach like I had, then you understand what a loss truly is, right? It's the space to be better. It's the space to pour into the gaps. It's the space to work on things that presented themselves as strong, but probably weren't as strong as we thought. It's the space to make corrections. It's the space to consume failure as lessons and learn from them and move forward and not repeat those same things. And so from that, I would say sports has taught me that we are on a constant journey of correcting failures, of leaning into wins and celebrating those things, but understanding failures are lessons. And those lessons only make us better and stronger and better and stronger and better and stronger. And it keeps going until you become your most authentic, your most amazing, your most successful self, whatever that is for you. Redefining that definition and being okay with that, sitting with that, right? And making sure that it edifies you, you know, it's pouring energy and light and positivity into you, but also it's doing that and reciprocating that to others. So that's what it's
very nice.
And it taught me to be, it's like I have an indomitable will to succeed. That's who I am. That's what it taught me.
Because it's bigger than you, right? I mean, that's part of it. It sounds like as amazing as you are, it's much bigger than you. And you're describing the idea that there is no finish line. It's a
Right.
constant, right? And you should embrace that.
Right. Right.
How about looking back? Anything that you would do differently, if anything? If you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
I think that everything that's happened in my life is those eclectic pieces has brought me to who I am, how I serve, and what I do today. And so I wouldn't change anything at all. But if I could go back, for the sake of your question, I would be more kind to myself. And I think also too, I'm always talking about love because love is so important. But what I'm really talking about is just energy and making sure that I share with people who I truly care about how much I really truly care about them. And also just, I would tell myself, you're on the right track. Keep doing what you're doing. You're on the right track. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're not alone. You'll be happy in a couple of years. Keep doing what you're doing.
Sometimes hard to give ourselves some grace, but it sounds like that's what you're suggesting. We need to do
grace
better. How about recommendations for or any advice for athletes who are preparing for the end of their career? What would you mention?
Right. And I said this before, but I think, let me give you 3 hard things. Find a mentor or a sponsor, somebody who can help you and sit down with you, hold you accountable for what your dreams and goals are, help you create the framework for that, the infrastructure for what that looks like, which ways you'll go, who to meet, right? Who can they connect you with in the industry that you want to transition into? And then looking at the education and making sure that you have all those things in place. Maybe that might mean you need to volunteer for a little while before you actually get that job. Maybe that might mean you need an informational interview. So that's 1, finding a mentor. 2, being very patient with yourself. Right? Things take time. But in that patience, you can educate yourself. Find those resources that are around you and really, really educate yourself. Read. Look at the stories that have come before you. Make sure that you're making those connections. So that's the part B to that. Look into your network, right? Building those relationships is essential to where you'll transition to and how you'll get into the spaces and worlds that you want to get into in terms of your work after a professional career. And then 3, I think 3 is being realistic about your dreams and goals and not being too hard on yourself. I think one of the things that I struggled with a lot and honestly struggle with to this day is what I mentioned off camera, and that was work is not like being an athlete, right? For me, I have to tell myself, you probably should be up till 12 a.m. trying to get all your work done because tomorrow I got this checklist and I want to check it out. Be realistic about this space and what that looks like being an athlete and being in whatever it is that you want to do. You can pour yourself into it, but don't kill yourself. You need to rest. You need to take time for yourself. The only way that you can be extremely successful is by really taking care of yourself. You need to be well in order to pour into whatever it is that you want to do and others. So I would say that.
Because it's selfish if not, right? If you can't show up with your best version based on that self-care, that ends up being selfish.
That's
right. I love the patience. That's the big one. It's hard. They're all 3 of them are powerful.
Right.
And as hard as you...
It ends up being selfish in an innocuous
way. No, go ahead.
Yeah. I said it ends up being selfish, but in an innocuous way, right?
Right. Not a deliberate, for sure.
Right.
And with the patience, you had an amazing work ethic. At 14, after you met that coach, that didn't mean that 20 minutes after you had that transaction and that interaction, you were this incredible player. You had to put in the work consistently over time. So, really, really good advice.
There you go. That's the 4th. Let's do the 4th. Do the 4th. Anything you want to be great at, anything that you would like to be successful at, anything that is of value takes time. A lot of time. You got to be willing to invest that time in yourself and others and whatever it is that you want to do. And you got to be patient with yourself. So we'll do 4.
Love it.
Yes. Things take time.
Very good. Yeah. All right. And how about anything else? Parting shots, any advice that maybe you wish you received during your journey that you could share with others? Just anything else you'd like to share?
I think the last thing that I'll leave this conversation with is that you have all the tools inside you to be whatever it is that you want to be in life. You are already that successful human. Lean into that. Listen to your own voice. Make sure your voice is positive. Self-reflect. Be honest with yourself. Love yourself first. Pour into yourself so that you can pour into others, and really, truly believe, just like you believed when you were an athlete. Believe now more than ever that you're capable of doing whatever it is that you put your mind, soul, and heart to. That's it.
Chinny, thank you a ton for sharing your amazing story with us, and the incredible work that you do to drive impact and change the world. And I have to tell you, you'll probably hear from a small, microscopic percentage of people that said, "Oh, Chinny, you saved and changed my life." But the reality is you've changed the lives for thousands. So you are inspiring and so appreciated.
Appreciate it.
A reminder to our audience, listen to Chinny's Play It Forward podcast. And everything that Chinny does and how she shows up is really aligned with Athlete Soul and our mission. And just as a reminder for our listeners, Athlete Soul and our mission is about supporting athletes as they transition away from sports. It's raising awareness about the challenges of athletic retirement, and it's also encouraging athletes to develop beyond sports, something that Chinny has done an amazing job outlining in her journey. So tons of services for athletes at all levels. And the great news is that the services are free, but we do encourage generous tips to your host, Brian Wood. No, just kidding on that last part. But for more information and to view other transition talks, please go to athletessoul.org. Chinny, thank you a ton. Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you.
We are
Thank you so
out
much.
of here. We'll see you next time. Thanks.